full agenda tonight.
Yeah, I guess.
Hey, is that one of those new flip phones? How do you like it?
Can fit in my pocket. Good.
Doesn't it?
Yeah, I carry my purse. It fit my purse already.
Don't need a merce.
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 Just leave it open.
Didn't look like they had much of a crowd over there, though.
It's not good.
Well, how long is it supposed to go on and when did it
Well,
start?
I'm just saying. I know what you meant.
I suppose it was something in today's paper, or yesterday's paper.
There was, but I don't remember the times.
Yeah.
Rox, how are you feeling after your surgery?
So,
Getting by.
You better?
Slow.
Take nourishment.
You
so
bet.
Lisa, where's Lisa?
Gotta
Too
stay-
much.
Gotta stay ahead of that.
She went towards the gym. There she
15
is.
Limitation, aren't you gonna waive limitation? Yeah, waive it from 10 to 15.
Hello.
Good evening.
Make sure you, take some Miralax.
Huh?
Make sure you take some Miralax.
Yeah.
6 o'clock.
Pain management?
Just 6 if you can go.
Like no other.
Why would I want to take?
Because it helps.
You got to turn on the machine, or?
Oh,
The machine is on, but
that's
the
already
lights
down, that's already down the
turn them
road.
off because when other people are here, so
I'm married to a nurse. Jesus.
So she's got you taken care of? And then some?
go ahead.
We'll call the Cascade Planning and Zoning Commission meeting to order. October 19th, 2023. Start out with roll call.
Otting,
Here.
Kerper,
Here.
Steffen,
Here.
Moriarty,
Here.
Conlon,
Here?
Moran.
Here.
Need a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Need a annual appointment of chairperson and vice chairperson.
Okay, before we go any farther, I get the Pioneer and it said that we reappoint it. But I was never contacted to see if I wanted to serve another term.
I know that the mayor tried calling you numerous times. I don't know what number he had because he didn't ask me. But he said he tried to call you and you were the one person that didn't come back. So if you're not interested in reserving, then we can find someone else and,
Yeah, I would be not. I said the last time that was gonna be my last term, so.
yeah. I know he tried to get a hold of you and he's on an emailer, so I have no idea.
Gee, I don't know. Okay,
Because I know he
well,
called a couple of you talked to him, right?
He talked to me personally.
I haven't talked to anybody.
Yeah, not everybody's up. So it was only, I think, one person got missed last year, and then there were 2 or 3 of you that were up this time, so.
3.
So we can let them know. I know we already have 1 vacancy. There should be 7 of you, but we can never find anybody to serve, so.
So we'll go about the process now of nominating, correct?
This is, yes, by ordinance. I was looking at the ordinance to confirm stuff, and it said on an annual basis, you're supposed to appoint a chair and a vice chair. I don't know what you've done in the past, but.
Okay, well, I'll nominate Mr. Murray here.
And then what about a vice? Did you ever have a vice before?
I think Naomi was, weren't you?
I was? I didn't think that there was a vice.
Yeah, if you read in the ordinance, it says you're supposed to have both.
No, I said I did not think that I was a
Oh,
vice.
was, got it. Well, it doesn't matter who was in the past, it's just who
Yeah.
you want this year, so
Okay.
just, Jim made the motion, right? Do you want, or do you want to add Naomi to your motion?
We can add Naomi for,
Vice, okay. And then you just need a second.
I'll second it.
I guess we'd take a vote on it.
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes.
Hold on, you didn't
Oh.
vote on,
Oh,
so it just needs
gotcha.
to be all in favor of the appointment for the chair and the vice chair. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, now you can go on.
I'll make the motion to approve the meeting minutes for June 1st, 2023.
I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Consideration of recommendation to the city council on the final plat of Oak Hill number 18 condominiums on Mulberry Drive.
So you'll recall, earlier this year, we changed, remember, we had the discussion about interior lots and how even though we had approved plats with interior lots in the past where there'd be 3 condos connected, so one doesn't have any side setbacks at all, we changed that ordinance. So that was somewhat in preparation for what would happen. And when these lots were when I approved the building permit, I made sure that lots 1 and 6 and 3 and 4 had enough for 8 feet on the sides. So when 3 and 4, like, you can obviously see the buildings on here, but where 3 and 4 are, there's 16 feet between the buildings, so that when they split it, each one has 8-foot setbacks on the sides, and then 1 and 6 have 8 feet. And then as I included in the ordinance, you can see that they're all compliant with the minimum of the 40 and the 50. So the interiors have to be at least 40, which they are. And then the exteriors have to be 50, and they are as well.
And these are all going to be separate buildings?
So they kind of, they started off with Mike and Bucky owning all of them, and then they kind of just go as things happen. And so what's happened is the first person's come forward wanting to buy one of them. So I said, you can either start splitting them off one at a time and leave 5 and 1, and then 4 and 2. And he just said, let's just split them off. So one of them will be sold if
They
this
have
gets
street
approved.
Parking
They have driveways, yes.
with garages
Yes.
for 2 cars.
I believe I don't know if they're 2-car garages. They might be 1. No, I think they're 2.
But as long as all them lots are wide enough,
That's the main thing that would require us to deny it if for some reason they weren't.
and they still need an 8-foot on each side of the building.
Yep, and they all have that.
Okay.
So like lot 6, they're saying is 52.89 feet wide.
Yep.
What is the length of them?
130.
130.
They're
Well-
all 130 deep.
Okay, so what is the 89, 29, 26?
Is that how big a building could be on there, maybe? I don't know.
No, S.
Well, it can't be 89 feet if it's only 59 or 52 feet
Yeah.
long.
I think it's south and. Yeah, again, sometimes if you guys have these questions, it's helpful if you send them to me ahead of time, because I don't know, I'm not a surveyor, so if you have those in the future.
That should all be on here, though. It should not be this, I would not think it would be that difficult to read this. Because it shows on the top side too, it says south, 89, 29, 26. And then east, 130.
Also, isn't there a space between lots 3 and 4?
Well, there's just the lot lines, but there's space
There's-
for the buildings. But obviously, this is not showing you anything about the buildings.
Yeah.
So you go lot 1, be a separate building, and then there'd be an 8-foot space. Then you go to lot 2.
So there's, on the very just say the top of the page, to the top of the lot 1, there's 8 feet. then there's a building that's connected to 2. So between 1 and 2 and 2 and 3, there's no setbacks because we allow them to be connected in a threeplex. Then when you get to 3, there's 8 feet after the building. And then when you get to 4, there's another 8 feet. So if you walked between 3 and 4, there'd be 16 feet. And then 5's connected to 4 and 6. And then at the bottom of 6, you would have the same thing, 8 feet.
So there's 16 feet between 3 and 4 is what you're saying?
Yes, buildings. Mhm.
So there's gonna be 3 condos, then a separation and 3 more.
Correct. And they're already built.
If they're built, how come we're looking at this?
Because they were legally allowed to build. Because they were one lot. It was all one lot before. So if one person owned them all and considered it rentals, they could do that. So the reason that we did that ordinance that we just changed was so that they would be legal to split. Because what was happening before I came was that you were creating a legal lot. And then when they wanted to split it, you were ignoring the fact that 2 people wanted to own them separately and they were no longer compliant. So the way we have to make them do it now is if you want to say like, I'm going to build 6, then I have to be able to say that when you split it, if you ever split it, they have to be legal. Because otherwise, the ones like out in Clawdaw or the previous ones should have never been allowed to be split because they weren't compliant with the code. So that's why they had to have 50s and 40s. And then, you know, like, because if this was all one lot and not going to be separated, 3 and 4 could be close together because they could just be interiors or it didn't matter. But I said, if you want to build these with the potential to split them, you must put 16 feet between 3 and 4. So that if you split it down the middle, you have 2 8s.
So are you saying that we're gonna have 2 sets of 3, or are we gonna have 6 individual?
The way this is 6 individual lots. But right now, one's being sold and Beck will own 5. It's Beck and Bucky. I don't know who it's, I think it's in the name of Mike. Everything's legal, so you don't really have like, there's no reason to deny it, but it still has to go through the process.
Well, I need a motion to approve the final plat of Oak Hill number 18 in the city of Cascade.
I'll make the motion.
Need a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'm gonna oppose it.
Okay, just a minute, I didn't write that down because Mike Weber was responding to me. Who made the motion?
I did. Curiosity on what,
What was the second?
I second it.
And everybody voted
Well,
yes except Naomi?
I don't
What's-
understand on everything that they're doing here.
So I think before, if you're voting no, then let's talk about it further so that you understand.
Okay, because I'm not understanding on how 3 individual buildings can be separately owned.
just
Because
like
that's-
next door to me.
Like, we have that all over town, it's a condo. So
That's
they
what we,
Townhomes are
that's what we
always-
approved how long ago when they
Okay.
put the 3 in next to me, so that they could be sold separate.
Okay,
That's what we addressed
Okay.
last year.
Yes.
got it.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
So we
Yes.
allow them to be connected and we call them interior lots and exterior lots to multifamily condos that are connected. So basically, prior to the code change that we made most recently since I've been here, it didn't acknowledge what happens when you have buildings connected. It always talked about side setbacks, but obviously if there's one chunked up in the middle that has 2 buildings right next to it, that doesn't have any side setbacks. So when you look at the code that's in the packet, it talks about 0 lot lines.
Okay,
And so if you're interior, so they call it a 0, look on page 10 of the packet. Or 11, any of them. They call it, if you look at the bottom of page 10, it's called a 0 lot line, single-family attached dwelling. So our code says you can have single-family dwellings that are attached, and if they are attached, you don't have to have a setback. So 2 and 5 are the interior ones to the 3s, you know?
okay, yep,
And so they don't have to have a setback on the sides.
okay,
And then 1, 3, 4, and 6, because they're threeplexes, those are the side lots. And then they have an exterior side, if you look at page 10 again. Those, the top of 1, the bottom of 3, the top of 4 and the bottom of 6 have an exterior side. 8,
Okay,
and they are, because on the top of 1 you have 8, and at the bottom of 3 you have 8, and then at the top of 4 you have 8. So when you go between 3 and 4 you have 16, and then again at the bottom of 6 you have 8. So these comply with that, and then they comply with having the width of one that's on the exterior. Again, if you look at the page 10, how it says an interior lot must be 40. See in the bottom left corner of page
Yes.
10? And the exterior lots have to be 50. So then when you go back to the plat, the interior ones have to be 40. And 40, or the interiors are 2 and 5. So they have to be 40, and they're 44s. And then the exterior lots, 1, 3, 4, and 6 have to be 50, and they're all 52, 53, 54.
got it. Thank you very much.
So you want to change your vote?
Yes, I will change my vote.
All right. And I don't know for any of you that, I'm not a plat person, but I asked Mike Weber, and he said, I said, what does the 89, 29, 26 mean? He says, it's the bearing of the line. So I think it means, it's like part of the description, not part of the lot, right?
Because other places on that show south, east, north. And west. Yep.
So I think it's just part of the description
Okay.
and its location. Whereas the 130 wide, and then the frontage is shown on all of those. And they're all square lots, because you can see the front and the rear are always the same. So, okay, so that passes.
Item number 6, consideration of recommendation to the city council on the urban renewal plan for the Cascade Urban Renewal Area.
So as the letter from our attorney explains from Dorsey and Whitney, it's required anytime there's an urban renewal plan for the Planning and Zoning Commission to review it prior to a public hearing, which is held by the city council. So that city council public hearing will be on November 13th. And I can just briefly go through the different projects that they're looking at adding to the urban renewal plan. The first one is Iowa Main Street Investments, which is the old brewery building that's being remodeled by Brian Bach. That project in itself was already put in the last urban renewal plan amendment. However, we added an additional $20,000. This is on page 13, no, 15, sorry, 15. So it's Project A, so Iowa Main Street Investments, that's the old brewery building on Buchanan and Second. And the $20,000 additional expense comes from the fact that they were going to be hooking in a sewer line from Third and Buchanan, which would be south of their building. And they wanted to put in just a lateral from that manhole, and then they would have to come up to the alley behind their building and just bring a long lateral. We wanted them to put in a main in the middle of Buchanan and then tee it off at the back of their building and put that lateral in, which also benefited then the properties on the other side of the road, which one of them is a Jeff Zoller rental, and I don't recall who owns the other one. So what we negotiated with them is that they would have to pay for a size pipe, and we wanted it to be slightly bigger because it would be a main. So we paid for the upsizing of it, and then they could have just ran the lateral, but by us putting a manhole in there, it was more beneficial. So we agreed to pay for the cost of the manhole and whatever the difference was between the two sides of pipes. So that was a maximum of $20,000. So the project itself, the building part, is already in the plan. This would simply be adding some sewer work instead of building remodeling for us to help fund. So that's where it has up to $20,000, and you can say, there's a typo in here, undertaken the construction of sewer improvements, which is the manhole and sewer improvements on between Second and Third on Buchanan. So we're basically paying ourselves back.
Isn't that normally the responsibility of the developer?
Not when they can hook to the lateral. Like, they would have been legal to put in a lateral.
Mm-hmm.
So by us saying, that we want to put it in as a main and have you tee it off and add a manhole. We had them do it and we paid the additional cost.
I know you build a street, you have to have, the street has to be developed by the developer. The street has to be put in, and then the city takes it over when it's done, the same way it's done at Oak Hill.
Right, but it's an existing street. So that's why.
So you can get 20 grand out of that.
He's not getting 20 grand. We're paying for our sewer manhole that we wanted to have placed in there. And because it's associated with that project, we are allowed to request TIF funding for it.
Oh, that's another thing. Do you want to explain TIF to us? Some of us don't understand it.
Ken? Want to talk about that right now? So what TIF means is that when you, like, we'll use the brewery building. Let's say the brewery building right now is worth $50,000 in value on the tax roll. And we all know how property taxes work. So we have a $50,000 value, and the city gets a small portion of the tax bill, the school gets a chunk, the county gets a chunk, the state gets a chunk, sometimes like an NICC gets a chunk, different places. So think of it as a pie, and you divvy up the pie. Value of $50,000, that's what's happening. And what TIF means, it's called a but-for test. So we want to invest dollars to help stimulate additional tax base. That's the increment. So we want taxes to go up, and in order to capture a way to give an incentive to the developer to do something, the goal is that that $50,000 rundown building gets valued at $500, $800, or $1 million. And then by having additional increment in the tax value, it going up, it is beneficial to all taxpayers. But what the state says is, in order to stimulate that, it's typically the city that does economic development. But we only get a little piece of the pie, right? So if we have to go give an incentive to a business, whether it's the money that we give towards their construction, whether it's something like this where we help pay for an upgrade to public improvements, the streets, the utilities, things like that, somebody has to pay for that. So what the state is saying, that instead of the city only getting to keep our little piece of the pie, which say out of a, let's just make up a number, if their taxes were $2,000 and we got $200, saying everybody else is going to get $1,800 while we keep $200, but then we give the developer money to help incentivize their taxes to go up, but everybody else benefits on the increase, but we still get our piece of the pie. So what it means is that the base, the $50,000 value, still gets divvied up by everybody. You all still get your individual piece of the pie. But now the pie just got bigger. It got taller, or think of it as a second pie for a set amount of time. So now you have this extra value that took the value from 50,000 to, let's just use 500,000. So now there's this extra $450,000 in tax value, right? It went from 50, they fix up the building, and now it's 500. So the county knows, when you have an urban renewal plan, that this 50 gets divvied up like a normal pie, and this 450, the city gets to recoup the vast majority of that money that the taxpayer, the new developer, is paying. So they pay a tax bill of $500,000 instead of 50. So if their taxes were $2,000 before, and then it goes up 10 times as much, now they're going to pay $20,000. So there's $18,000. So what it says to the city is, you have access, city, through going through this process, to keep and pull back that money, that $18,000 extra dollars, and use it to pay these kinds of bills, to incentivize things to happen. Because you're saying, like, if we're not participating in this and giving incentives, that person would have never come and fixed up the building and gone from $50,000 in value to $500,000 in value. So when you're adding these things, your goal is that a building goes up, and then we get to keep it. Now, what happens in most cases, we're a little bit different because some of these are blighted areas. But the normal intent of TIF is that then you have a set amount of years where we get to keep that extra $18,000, if that was the extra, I'm making up that number, of course, but if there was extra tax value, you get a certain number of years to keep that. So when we decide to spend money on a project, we have to be looking at the fact that the idea behind what we're helping pay for adds tax value. However, there's pots of money, and they also in Iowa allow you to do public infrastructure projects to also help through all the other things that add value to the tax increment financing areas. Not our whole city is in there, so it's not our whole pot of taxes that everybody pays. But the basic gist of it is, you take a base, everybody's made whole, because right now, everybody's divvying up that 50,000, right? Like the school isn't being harmed, they just have to wait. So they have to wait to get this tax. And the other thing that makes it a little more complicated in Iowa is that part of the taxes that go up, in my scenario of saying they used to be 2,000 and now they're 20, so there's extra 18, a little bit of that still goes to the school anyway, so that the school isn't not getting all of theirs. So you don't get the full 18,000, but that's a higher level of complication to the topic. But the general gist is, take a base value, freeze it, let everybody keep dividing that, and then say to the city, go get the pie, do things to make the pie bigger. And the pie being bigger means add tax value. And in the process of doing that, we're gonna create a pot of money that instead of everybody dividing up the new value right away, you're gonna get to keep it, and you only keep it when you spend money. So we don't just get to keep it for fun, we keep it because we say, we gave Brian Bach something, we gave Chad Demmer something, we gave Brothers Market something. And then you are supposed to be saying like, that these are the reasons why these things happen, because we give incentives. Make sense? Kind of.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it's confusing because you think of urban renewal, and then you're talking about new places, and that screws everybody up in the head too, because you're
Right,
thinking.
because it can be the industrial park where it was green space
Right, you're thinking.
versus blight. So what you have to think about in that way is that urban renewal can be any sort of development, and when it's blight is what you're using as renewal. So there is, and we have some different sets of rules because we do have blight, and the blight area for us is downtown. So when you take, like how we have Rob Napper's building, where Larry Knipper's carpet is, that was a blighted building. So when we were putting money into that, that's more the way you're thinking of the word renewal. But renewal can be anything that you help renew the value of your city. When you determine to have blight is where the rules change a little bit, and again, kind of adds more complication to the general idea of what urban renewal is.
How much of the city is into?
I believe 13 million of our approximately 100, I think we had 105 million not in the urban renewal area, and about 10 of that. I'd have to go back and get the numbers. But that's what I recollect.
Don't you have to create jobs to get that incentive either?
We kind of eliminated that. They were doing that where they would add, but again, when you think about what I just said, where you have to grow the pie, right? Like that's where you get your money to pay it back. While jobs are good for the community, and we look at them favorably, they don't generate extra tax dollars to help pay those fees. So,
They generate
Rick,
revenue for the town.
it is, but we don't get anything back from it directly to be able to pay for the incentive. Because like sales tax, for example, if there's more people working here and then they spend their money during the day when they're working here, even if they don't live here, that generates additional sales tax for the county, which indirectly we get more of, but we don't get anything directly because of that. And so, in the equations that we do, you are correct that in the past they did that. And it might be that if you're creating like a factory livable wage job, we have the right to alter the percent of dollars that we give you. So in that chunk of money that I said was growing the pie and making it bigger, and we had like that 18,000, we can pull back less, and you'll see that in here. We give less when you don't have jobs, and we give more if these are creating livable wages. But it's not directly correlated to the jobs. It kind of sways the pendulum as to how many years we would let you keep the money. And the way they get the money is they pay their property taxes, like the extra taxes that they now pay, and then we look at that tax bill, and then we refund them. So when you see the words rebate, you have to pay your taxes and then get it back.
So if you're gonna build a building, definitely build it in a TIF district.
Yes. I mean,
Otherwise, you don't. you're not gonna get anything.
Correct.
Well, that'd make it easy, wouldn't it?
Yes. So any questions about the first project, which is that sewer? The second project is the Ross Orr Building, that's the Rosso Properties. That was at 109 First Avenue that he's been remodeling. So you can see it's a smaller incentive with a max of $25,000. And this is a little bit like, going forward, we will always have these projects at the front end being approved. Prior to my arrival, businesses, including Ross, were told that, hey, like, get your improvements done and then come and see us. I don't think that's exactly the right way to do it, but we're trying to recognize, Chad Demmer had the same situation, which we approved him in our urban renewal plan amendment a year ago.
Is our building in the TIF district?
Is what?
Our building up there in the TIF district,
What building are you talking about?
Group Service Center? We still own the building.
I would have to look. I have a
So
map.
if I wanted to put an addition on that, I could apply for TIF money?
If it's in the TIF, I have to look.
Okay, I'd like to know that part of it.
The third project is NJ Callahan, which is Nick and his wife Jeanette. They built that storage building out there. So again, when you see the dollars that we're giving, although it's a fairly sizable building, we're only saying not to exceed $20,000. And that's again because it's more storage, even though it does add tax value. There's no job. There is one small job for some of the organizing of the, there's a batting cage and some rental things and stuff, but this is not like a factory opening and employing people. So theirs would be a $20,000 incentive. And then the next two are both city things, not actual private projects. So this coming summer, we will be doing Highway 136 from the alley just on the south side of the gas station here. We're not going actually into the highway intersection at the light, but you'll start at the alley and go all the way to the city limits to the south, past the park. And so again, we have an opportunity to say that because that's a major thoroughfare, we can't put like small residential roads in the TIF. But when it is a major thoroughfare to get in and out of your community, to bring people to the business districts, you have the opportunity to say, if there's TIF funding, that you can try to capture some of that instead of putting the total burden of that debt on the taxpayers.
What's the DOT say about that?
They don't have a problem with it.
I thought, see, like Worthington DOT redid that 136 through town.
And,
Well, didn't cost Worthington anything.
yeah, we have to pay for, it's a $2.2 million project, and we're at about 900,000 of it. And the main reason is water, sewer, and storm. The DOT, if you're just doing the road, like, they are paying for the vast majority of the road.
Okay.
But they will never put in public utilities. And so when you've got the road open, we need to obviously not reopen it when something fails.
I just didn't understand,
They must have needed the upgrades. Were,
Well, they did.
did they?
They did.
I mean, they're paying sizable amount.
Oh, okay.
And then we got some county money approved back in May that I applied for, so the county's contributing like 120. And then I kind of pushed pretty hard for the DOT to help us pay for the sidewalks to make them wider. They're only 4-foot sidewalks. And obviously 5 feet is ADA accessible where 4 is not. And so we pushed, and I sent in a lot of paperwork and some grant requests, and they ended up agreeing that the DOT's portion would go up by 80,000 to pay for the sidewalks. So we started with an amount that came down by 200,000 in the last couple months. So they don't, when you say what do they think, they don't care how we fund our portion of it. So we'll have to borrow money. And then what this is saying is that the debt is eligible to be paid for if there's TIF capacity to use that. And it won't all come out of TIF most likely, but at least by adding this project in there, if there is capacity, that gives us the opportunity to use that. And then the last thing is one of the things that Cascade has never done before, is when you look at all the costs of economic development in terms of staff time. So it's for myself, for Kathy as the clerk, and then the new marketing and promotion person. We're saying that overall in the course of a year, that 10 to 15% of our time is used to negotiate these deals, implement the paper, like the projects, the paperwork, filing things, meeting with the attorneys. We have annual reports that have to get filled out, and so you are allowed to say that an appropriate portion of those staff members' wages can also be charged to the TIF. And so, the vast majority of our wages would not go to that, but we have an opportunity again when trying to be creative with the budget that can be added. So those are the 5 things that are the focus of this. Any questions?
Well, do we have to make a motion to approve it, or?
Yep, so the appropriate thing would be that you, if you look on this letter, you have to review the plan and comment to the council as to whether you believe these projects conform with our future plans. So it could just be a motion. If somebody wants to make it, we could state that the motion says you reviewed the plan amendment this evening and that you are in agreement that these proposed amendments are consistent with our plan. If anybody's willing to make that motion.
I'll make the motion.
Steve?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Yes.
And that is all I have.
Is there any other business anybody wants to?
Are the books gonna get updated fairly soon?
I don't know what you mean by books.
The ones that are supposed to be done every 5 years?
What book?
This book.
Yeah.
I think the last time it was updated was 2010.
Is that the zoning code? I don't even know what you guys have. I've never been told you have a book.
Yeah, we got the
Yeah,
book.
we each have books. I turned mine in a while back because it was outdated.
Yeah.
Is it the zoning code?
Yeah,
Yeah. It's kind of a disaster.
very much so.
Because I feel like, so one of the things that we did, but the zoning code doesn't count on there, if you go on our website, our code, with the exception of the zoning code, is all online now. And so we pay a company to keep it online and host it, which is a company that does municipal codes. And so every time that we change an ordinance, it automatically gets sent to them, and within days after the 3rd reading that a council has, the code is up to date. And so anytime that someone looks at the code, it's up to date. Getting the zoning code to be that way as well is gonna take some time, because I don't know that anybody updated it as you made changes. So I have to basically figure out a date that I know that document is from, and then I'm gonna have to go back and look at every change that you made prior to my arrival, I guess, from that date forward, and then know that what it says, and then be able to put that on there. So that again, like when we did these condo changes, where we changed the lot lines, that you instantly put that online, and it's always a living document. So when you talk about every 5 years, the thing that living, breathing, online, accurate code does is you don't have to change it every 5 years. Because essentially what you're doing is you're changing it every time you change the code. So they call it recodification, is I think what you're probably referring to.
But we're not doing that in zoning yet.
No, but I don't know what anybody did, because it's difficult to come up with that. So I'm gonna have to I have to determine when that book was changed last, and then do everything since then. Because I can see little random codes that were changed. And we have a book, but it's the individual codes that got changed. You know how you look at the ordinance, and just like what I put in your packet, where it says, something's underlined or something has a strike through, and you have to put all those together. And so, unfortunately, I have no idea what Deanna and Danielle did last, so we'll have to work on this. So every time we look for a code, we have to kind of reference the book that you have, and then everything that's happened recently, so that you know that it's accurate.
And that's what we don't have access to.
That's why every time that we put, like, every time I've tried, like, when we were doing this tonight, that's why I brought the code in here and gave it to you, so that
Yeah.
you're not struggling with what is the code. And I do that for the city council, even though they have access to all their codes. I find it more effective that if we're talking about changing the dog ordinance, I don't have them going out and looking for the dog ordinance. I just put it right in their packet, so it's just easy and convenient. Not that we don't need to update the book, we do. But every time we talk about a code, I just want it to be easily accessible right next to whatever I said. So I try to make sure, and I will, until we get that ready, I will make sure you have the same.
Any other business?
I don't know how big of a can of worms that this is opening, just asking, how did you get the DOT to pay for sidewalks for a TIF? Or vice versa?
Totally not, so you're mixing things, like whatever we have to pay for is what we are saying we want to charge to the TIF.
Okay.
Okay,
how
so
do
that has
we-
nothing to do with what the DOT is willing to fund. So when I got here, the DOT obviously has us paying for water and sewer and storm, because they don't pay for that. They basically pay for streets. And then it was that they were not paying for sidewalks. And so I kept pushing in my meetings, I'd be like, hey, it seems appropriate that you're paying for sidewalks. And they were like, yeah, sorry, we're not. And then there was a new person on their crew that kind of got assigned to our project. And he said, well, why don't you write me a formal letter requesting that? And I had said, like, can we split the cost of the sidewalks? At some, just like we pay for a little bit of the streets, can we pay a little bit of the sidewalks and then have you pay for a chunk of it? Because you're encouraging pedestrian travel, but yet you're not funding it. And so he said, send me a formal request. So then I got an email back saying, hey, there's this grant program where the state has dollars to help you put in curb ramps, like the ramps
the
at the
ADA
corners,
compliant?
yes. And then the little landing zones that, help people with little raised up stuff.
The Braille.
Yep. And so they sent me this application link. I filled all this application stuff out, basically like asking, you had to say like, this is where all the sidewalk work is on our project, this is the actual cost of it. So we had to have MSA as our city engineer kind of draft all of that. And then we sent it in. And I got an email back that said, we'll review it. And literally like the next day, they sent me an email saying, instead of having you get funding from a whole nother source, because that program is separate from the highway money, we're just gonna up our contribution from the DOT by the amount of the sidewalks. And I was like, good enough. Just pushing.
Good job.
Yeah.
I was like, well, $80,000 in the coffers today. Thank
Yes.
you.
Lisa, are we supposed to have ADDs, the
ADA compliant?
access on all of our sidewalks to the
As you
streets?
redo them, you
Redo
have
them,
to, but like, no one would ever be able to
That's what I
afford to
wondered,
switch
'cause-
every
Because I
corner.
know as soon as you go over on Second Avenue South, there's a lot of them missing. Or there'll be one over here, and none over here, and one over here.
Yeah. Basically, every time we do a project, we're always gonna try to get them taken out and then put a ramp in there. Which is why we were pushing, like, why would we not have the whole strip down there be appropriately, and then make them wider? Because a lot of towns that have old sidewalks had those 4-foot sidewalks, and if you just have, even if you're just walking together with a friend, like, you can barely stay on the concrete while you're walking without kind of bumping shoulders or kind of getting off the edge. so.
Which I don't agree with you, but most Cascade does not, the walkers do not use the sidewalks.
No,
I know.
but
And they're not even in the new subdivisions.
Only when it snows.
It's
Yeah,
a
and
common,
when it's icy,
Yeah.
that they walk on,
Yeah.
yes.
yeah, because they feel safer in the street, which, I will argue that we have ordinances that say people should clear their sidewalks, and most small towns just don't have staff to be aggressive on it, but I think we should be aggressive to get people to clear their sidewalks safely. That's what the code says, you have so many hours, and a lot of times those just kind of get ignored.
Well, there's a lot of ordinances that are supposed to be enforced but don't get enforced.
Yeah, well, I try to be a rule follower, and And if there is one that we're not enforcing for a reason, that's what I usually go back to the council and say, all right, but I also try to encourage the staff, like, we shouldn't be waiting for people to complain about something. We should, if this is our code and it says to clear your sidewalk, or don't blow snow in the road, or don't blow your grass in the road, or let's try to call people out. Because usually if you address it, people will stop.
And don't put up crosswalk lights when there's no need to. And don't lower the speed limit when there's really no need to. Enforce it.
Right.
Enforce what we have.
If there's no other business, I'll need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Turn off the cameras.
Job well done, ladies.
Thanks. Thanks for being.
I'm so stiff after being in that car for 9 days. Jesus.
Where'd you go?
We went to, well, I had a meeting up in Seneca, New York. Well, so let's just go back up to Maine.
Yeah,
Yeah, there you
would.
go.
Got up there and doggone.
A heartbeat.
It was a mess.
Oh, yeah.
They had so much rain.
Oh, yeah.
Everything was